Workers of Reddit, what is your best I'm getting fired moment at work? What were the consequences? I work tech support for my university's School of Engineering. It was late, and I was in the labs doing homework with people. After I finished, I was just wandering the halls because I was bored. One of my co-workers left his ID in a classroom. We use our IDs to unlock each classroom, so I had to let him in. Usually, we only have to slide our wallet over this black box, and if our ID is in there, it will unlock. I decided that since my wallet is in my back pocket, all I'd have to do is put my butt up against the wall, and the door would open. It was a little high, so I had to jump. I took a step, jumped up, spun around to scan my butt, and immediately put both feet through the drywall. I stuck the landing, made eye contact with the other employee, and walked away. I came back, slid a wet floor sign in front of the holes I made and put in a work order to have them filled. They were filled, and nobody besides me and that co-worker ever knew I did it. I still work there. My dad does that with the little stand thing outside his office. It's hilarious seeing a 50-something-year-old guy carrying a bunch of books do a little hop and slam his butt into the scanner, then just calmly walk into the building. I worked for a privately owned restaurant deli. The owners were married and terrible people. I would get a phone call and be demanded to work in the next few hours on threat of being fired if I quit. Anyways, one day I got in a big deal of trouble for giving a customer double meat without charging him. Now I don't mean a talking to in the back office, I mean full on being screamed at in front of customers. Anyways, after I backtalked, I was let go in front of a line of prospective buyers. As I walked put of the store, I looked over my shoulder and proudly said to my bosses I pooped in the cookie dough. This was a lie, but they didn't know it. We had a huge vat of it in the back. Our cookies were very popular, so it was a big deal to them. My co-worker eventually told me, and the husband and wife devil duo looked through the door and couldn't tell what was chocolate chip and what was my poop. Even though I never actually did it, they threw out the whole vat $500,1000. Felt good, on threat of being fired if I didn't show up. I don't know how quit got in there. On threat of being fired if I quit. Line cook at a restaurant. One of my managers was a black lady and we would rib on each other about ethnicities. I'm half Mexican, and one day she says America loves Mexicans more than black people. I said balls. We have to sneak our way across the border any way we can, and you all got a free cruise. She got a blank expression on her face. I looked at the guy next to me and he had the "well, it's been nice having you around" look on his face. I look back at her and just grin because that's all I can do at this point. She slowly reaches out her hand and gives me a fist bump and commends me on my comeback. Didn't get fired. It did close down later though. Oh well. Worked at a pet store. Manager asked me to move a koi from one tank to another. A big giant $100 koi rips through the net, lands head first on the ground and flops twice before dying. Manager and I made eye contact and all he said was, "That's the first one I bought when I started the store." His name was Patches. He went into the office and gently closed the door. I grabbed my jacket, waved to the others and left. Patches, just what the net needed. I work at a university. A vice president brought a minority student to my office. Said minority student complained that I had refused to help him because I was xenophobic. I'd actually denied the student's request because, as I'd explained to the student earlier, I wasn't permitted to fulfill his request as he hadn't paid to join the program that gave him access to what he wanted. He had thanked me for checking things out for him and answering his questions and then left. So I was quite surprised when he came back with an irate vice president in tow. I made an exception at the vice president's request, and then spent 3 very tense days explaining my actions to my boss and her boss. It led to my boss having a meeting with the helpful vice president about why we couldn't issue $1,000 pieces of equipment to people who hadn't paid us any money for the use of them, and why my department heads didn't feel like they should fire me for following department policies. I think the shittiest part of this is that the guy got what he wanted by pulling the race card, thereby reinforcing the behavior and encouraging him to do it more. I highly doubt he even thought you was xenophobic, but I'm sure he has taken advantage of white guilt in that way before. Worked at Blockbuster. Someone apparently had paid with a $10 bill, and I gave them 80 some odd dollars and change. My till was almost $90 short that night. Found the transaction. Found the account it was tied to. Tried calling to plead for mercy. Number is disconnected. Manager is a good friend of mine. She says, well, I'll leave a note for store manager. He'll want to talk to you tomorrow. I come in the next morning and store manager is there. Really quiet. Really focused. Very polite. But I can tell something is on his mind. An hour goes by and we work in relative silence. 2 hours. 3 hours. 4 hours. And then I go to lunch. I come back, ready to face the music. So, am I fired or what? Store manager gives me a weird look. What? Why would you be fired? I take a deep breath and say because of how short I came up last night. We tried to get in touch with the customer. We even took the register apart in case we made a mistake. Wait, he says. What happened? Turns out, either the note didn't get left, or he didn't find it. He calls the manager from the previous night. She tells him about it. He comes out of the back office like 15 minutes later and says, look, any other day, I would have written you up. You wouldn't have been fired. Everyone makes mistakes. But since you owned up to it, I'm gonna just say a mistake got made and leave it at that. And a sigh of relief from me. So, I work at a bank. Within my first 2 weeks, I left my money out. Now, normally, if the drawer was locked, it wouldn't be a big deal. But I didn't do that. I just left a pile of cash, roughly valued at $20,000, in 2 drawers out for an entire freaking weekend. And nobody found it, from Friday morning to Monday evening. Used to work at a bank. I promise you are not the first, or last, to do this. I was working in a movie theater and we found a phone inside. It was a flip phone, nothing special. We kept a hold of it until the owner claimed it, and for some bonehead reason, I decided to take a picture of my dong on it. Made it the background photo, so whenever someone unsuspecting opened it up, bam, there's my dong. Coworkers thought it was hilarious and wanted to see it too. Next day we're all preparing for work when our manager comes in and says, alright, WHO did it, and looks around at us. I feign ignorance and ask who did what. He replied, the dong. Who took a picture of their dong and put it on the phone. I denied it was me and everyone else kept mum. Later on that day he approached me privately, pun intended, and said he knew it was me. Knowing I couldn't hide it anymore, I questioned him as to how he knew it was me, and he explained that the background made him realize it was taken in the employee restroom and he narrowed it down from there. Holy crap, I felt bad, but he gave me a pat on the back and told me never to do it again, and I somehow kept my job. TLDR. My boss went CSI on a picture of my dong. He was bluffing. He told everyone he knew it was them, and you admitted it. Forgot to secure a $10,000 machine I was transporting with the truck and bam, machine fell in the middle of the street. Pieces everywhere, causing a bit of traffic. But luckily I'm the boss, so I can't really fire myself. We all agreed it was extremely stupid. The female chef at my job was, for some reason, allowed to have her 11-year-old son running around in the restaurant. He was the most obnoxious 11-year-old you can imagine, and I know they can be obnoxious. He thought because I was a waiter and his mother was a chef, he was my supervisor. One day I had been taking a cup of coffee in the back and I heard customers coming in. I walk through the kitchen to the reception and halfway there the kid runs into me and says, why weren't you working? And I just freaking lost it and yelled, shut the frick up and let Emmy work, and walk out to the reception. I plastered on a smile and hoped the customers didn't hear me. They'd heard me, and I did my best to explain to them that there was a kid around and I did not apply for a job as a babysitter, and gave them as good of a service as I could. I thought this was the point at which my temper would finally catch up to me, but it turns out that the chef did not hear and my boss was out on town to do business stuff or something. I can't believe I managed to keep that job. Not me, but a coworker. I worked at a grocery store and one of my coworkers was gathering shopping carts outside. He was just minding his own business when, out of nowhere, some cops pulled up. They got out, put him in handcuffs, then proceeded to throw him in the car. Last I saw of him, I can imagine him seeing them and thinking, damn it. I walk into the liquor shop where I worked for a few years and there's some clown behind the register. Turns out he's the new owner. Old owner decided to let us figure it out the hard way that we were out of a job. But a few years ago I was reading The Road by Cormac McCarthy while on my lunch break. Highly recommend. BTW. At one point I came across a word I was unfamiliar with. The context in which it was used gave me no clue as to what it could have meant. This was before I had a smartphone. So I wrote the word down and decided to look it up online when I got back to the office. The word was catamite. Wait until you're at home to look it up if you don't know what it is. Explaining why I googled it was rather awkward, but I did not lose my job, fortunately. Ancient usage. A boy kept for gay practices. Modern usage. The passive partner in riding back doors. I found a hurt owl on my way to work. It was stunned so I was able to pick it up. Another car stopped too, when they saw what I was doing and gave me a trash bag. I put the owl in the trash bag and put it in the trunk of my car. I called a raptor rescue and told them about the owl and said I could bring it after work. But they said I should keep an eye on it, in case it takes a turn for the worst. So I had no choice but to bring the owl into my office. I transferred it to a printer box. One time when I went to check on it, it had recovered and flew around the entire floor of my office. It was amazing. Its wingspan was nearly 5 feet and people could see its shadow move across their desk as it flew. It promptly crapped on my friend's file cabinet and landed on his cube wall. I ran to get it but it flew away again and did another lap around the floor. Finally I was able to grab the bird and place it back in the box. The VP was to say the least not pleased. I thought for sure that was my last day at the company. No one ever said a word to me. But from that day forward I quit bringing any wild or tame. Used to bring my dog into work before his grooming apt animals into work. At that year's Christmas party they sang the 12 Days of Christmas with the chorus and an owl flying in distress. This was many years ago working tech support sales for the up and coming GoDaddy.com. I'm on a call with a customer who needs to reset her password. Since it's very difficult to turn a password reset call into a sale, we were required to wrap them up under 10 minutes. This woman is awful, doesn't follow directions and is completely computer illiterate. 30 minutes into the call, and I'm still trying to explain the concept of highlighting text with her mouse and my supervisor comes over to ask what the heck is taking so long. Frustrated and aggravated, I mash the mute button, and once the light turns red, I turn to him and say, "Sorry, this lady is a freaking idiot." There is a brief moment of silence. I recall my supervisor's face morphing into a grin of understanding, when suddenly I hear in my headset, "What? Scumbag mute button." Worst part is, if I had just called her an idiot without the adjective, I would have gotten off with a warning. There's a strict no swearing policy on the phone floor that no one, even the managers, followed. However, in the rare and unlikely case a customer heard you curse, you were fired without question. I worked at a call center and was joking around with a friend of mine. She had just engaged in a relationship with another girl and was complaining that the fricking wasn't very good, making jokes, and saying that she wanted to play with her new girlfriend's butt but her girlfriend was having none of it. Off mute. Without missing a beat, I just looked my friend and said, "So, you like butt play, do you?" And then, slowly, quietly, I hear the customer's voice, "You're off mute, just so you know." I went pale. As soon as the call was done, I approached my supervisor, who was and still is cool as heck. I've left there but we still play games together all the time, and gave him a heads up in case a manager approaches him about it. Thankfully, it looks like the call went by unnoticed, in a time where we were having 20-25 calls a week listened to, and I only took about 10 a day, and I wasn't fired. Worked third shift at a cafe in downtown Milwaukee and at around 3:30 the cops come in and I comped them their drinks and food, per usual. Since my only other clientele typically consisted of the homeless, sickheads, or a combo of both, I ask the cops to watch the place so I can take the trash out back and smoke a cigarette. This, again, was our usual routine. So I grab the trash, head out back, and light up my usual 3 AM joint. As I'm standing there in the alley, this guy comes around the corner from the Riverwalk and I hold my breath and hide the J behind me, hoping he'll just keep walking. No. He stops right in front of me, looks at me, and holy crap, it's the owner of the cafe, plus about 4 or 5 other major restaurants in town. If any of you have ever worked in food service in Milwaukee, you'll probably know who I'm talking about. Anyway, he's right in front of me and he asks, "Don't you work for me here at business name?" "Yes," I say as I exhale a hit right in his face. Who's inside then? The cops. And they've been camped and are watching the place? Yes sir. Great, let me hit that. I hand it over to him and he hits it and compliments me on my taste in weed. We stand there, smoking the J, talking about restaurants and whatnot. At the end, before I go back inside, he offers me a job as a waiter at his steakhouse, starting as soon as he's able to replace me at the cafe. Long story short, I went from making $7.25 an hour serving sea-kids who wanted a warm place to stay the night, to making around $250 a night in tips. It was pretty freaking sweet. And schools say drugs get you nowhere. My supervisor has had it in for me for a while now. Tries every little thing he can to get me written up with HR and put me on a PIP, performance improvement plan. One step away from being fired. Ultimate goal for him is to replace me with an H1B at a lower salary. Luckily at my age, I'm seasoned, and I know how to deal with these sort of things. One of our co-workers had brought a juice maker into work. Someone used it and just let fruit pulp dry on it. She was mad, left a note for the culprit to clean it. Same day, someone steals a slice of my pizza from the fridge. So it's the end of the day, I wash her juicer and write a funny snarky note. Next day is all high fives from everyone in the company. Everyone saw the note and thought it was hilarious. So I take a picture of it and put it up on my Facebook. Friends all like it too. I get an email CC'd to me and HR. Toka, you have violated a company social media policy and will be written up by HR. A screenshot of my Facebook post was attached. Thing is, profile is completely private. He must be one of those fake friends on my profile. I asked him, what did I specifically violate? Pro tip, always ask for specifics. Don't let them vaguely accuse you of violating a policy. You gave the impression that our company is full of pizza thieves. A few months earlier I had browsed his Facebook. Of interest was a post he made. I hate the nepotism at work. I made my screenshot, sent it to HR and sat down with the director. My Facebook settings are private, so there's no way he could have gotten that screenshot without being a fake friend. Is he doing this to all the people in our department? Because if he isn't, I'm being singled out. If my profile is private and he's creating fake users, isn't he violating my privacy? Also, we have to apply weight to the comments. He's a director, I'm a peon, whose position carries more weight. Continuing with weight, whose comment is more damaging to the company reputation? My complaining about a missing pizza slice, or his complaining about rampant nepotism? Finally, what is a judge going to say if you fire me over a pizza note? He was absolutely livid, but I was right. There was nothing HR could do about it unless they wanted to write him up too. Good guys win sometimes. I feel like maybe you should have had him checked out by HR. Creepy male boss put his arms around me during an outing. I automatically shrugged him off. Consequences? Well, a few weeks later, I started overhearing rumors that my clients were complaining about my job performance. I haven't gotten any complaints from or had serious problems with any, so that was odd. Then, my $3 million client got transferred to my co-worker who's always had his tongue shoved deep in that creepy boss butt. Things turned out great though. I was lucky since another boss who's frequently in competition with him decided to take a gamble and absorb me into his team. His gamble paid off. Creepy boss tried getting rid of another new employee. The guy was a seasoned hire, refused to suck up. The CEO was confused since the guy has lost 4 people in a team of 2 in just 3 years, and if he got rid of that guy, it'll be 5 within 3 years. Since I was the only employee he got rid of that's still in the bank, he asked about my job performance. This happened in a meeting where he's off on vacation and can't defend himself for about 2 weeks. The other unit heads smelled the blood and quickly bullshitted praises about me. They told the CEO I was a genius. Clients adored me. Several operations heads lovingly talked about how popular I was with operations, and like most relationship managers, the treasury head talked about how he spotted my talent in my first year and everyone was so upset he lost the bid to absorb me into his team. Basically tons of bulls. The CEO came to the conclusion that this guy sucked as a boss and only got to where he is through tons of butt licking. I got to know all this because my boss was so gleeful about the backstabbing session. He couldn't resist gloating to me when creepy boss mentioned another big bank wanted him. trying to negotiate for a counteroffer. The CEO just said, "They want you. You will not be on my list of people to poach." The CEO's secretary loves to gossip and told everyone he didn't get a counteroffer and had to leave. To be fair, the place you work at sounds crappy as far as work environment. I worked for a real estate company one summer during college. They owned a big, old boarding house, and unbeknownst to my employer I got my best friend to rent a room there during the summer. There were pretty strict rules, but not many of the rooms were rented out, so we ignored those. Had people over late, partied outside, you know the drill. One late night a bunch of us were on the back porch wasted, smoking pot, yelling, having a great time. All of a sudden a car came peeling into the driveway and I thought through my drunken and high haze, that looks a lot like my boss wife's car. Next thing I know my boss wife, P as all heck, comes stomping up to us so livid I was literally scared for my life. She hadn't recognized me yet because there were about 10 of us, and I was holding a beer and a blunt. So I tried to slip away quietly, but as soon as I moved we locked eyes. She said, in the most P voice I have ever heard, that freaking better not be rules about the cookies, and because I was pretty much exhaling pot smoke in her direction as the words left her lips, I pretty much knew my time with that rental company was over. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.